All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's a little difficult to get on everyone's calendar these days with the state of the world that it's in, hence you guys are also joining me here in my home office as well. So again, thank you so much for taking the time. We know you guys have busy schedules, whether you're with us live or on demand. Again, thank you. My name's Gary Schaefer, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our new product and managed service called ZEERO. And the goal of ZEERO here is to try to accelerate the adoption of emerging technology to help you transform and modernize your organization. So once again, my name is Gary Schaefer. I'm a senior solutions consultant here at Cornerstone Technical Solutions. My background is primarily on the infrastructure side of the house. Early in my career in the military and then a little bit in some government contracting, was very heavy on the Windows side of the house and storage and security, of course, and all of those types of things. Right around 2012, I saw the light and kind of where Linux was going, where open source was headed, and where the industry in general was going. So I started to learn things like RHEL and OpenStack and a little bit of Ansible automation, and that's really when things kind of took off over the last few years. The conversations I like to have are usually with the ops guys, the cloud infrastructure guys, and really have those hybrid and multi-cloud type of conversations. We still do things on-prem, but everybody's got a cloud deployment of some kind. So that's what I enjoy talking about. Jared Patrick is also with us today, and he kind of helps us bridge that gap between dev and ops. And he is our senior software and PaaS consultant. He is a ninja, to say the least. He is our full stack developer in-house as well, or one of them, I should say. He knows Golang and Python like the back of his hand. He knows how to develop microservices correctly, and he knows OpenShift and Kubernetes very, very well. And the cool thing is not only does he know how to deploy a container orchestration platform or deploy a solution, but he's also a consumer of those services as well. So as a developer, he knows what the pitfalls might be with a company or an agency's strategy, right? Whether it's an automation strategy or an application modernization strategy, whatever that is, he kind of knows what to look out for on the customer's behalf, and hopefully we can help our customers avoid some of those lessons learned. Also, we want to point out Rick Stewart. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us today, but he is the chief technologist over at DLT Solutions. They are now a tech data company. We'll kind of get into some of that. But I at least wanted to give him a shout out here. He's done a lot of work, as you'll see throughout the presentation. A lot of the framework that birthed ZEERO, if you will, kind of came out of DLT as well. So again, I wanted to give him a shout out and also provide his contact information as well as when it comes to the Secure Software Factory, which we'll talk about a little bit. All right, so I at least wanted to introduce DLT first. They are a tech data company now as of late last year. Tech data acquired them mainly for the public sector footprint. But DLT's goal in life is to accelerate public sector growth for technology companies. So they work with public sector agencies, state, local education, higher education. And they've got a couple locations in Northern Virginia, as you see here. They're on 120 different contract vehicles in-house, and they have some purpose-built demand generation and channel enablement services that we are now starting to take advantage of through our relationship with them. So again, really good partner in bringing OEMs and partners and potential customers together in one place. So they've really been able to tell that aggregation story, if you will, bringing everything together. And again, as you see here, just a little bit of numbers and market scale. With the tech data acquisition, of course, those numbers have really grown pretty significantly. I believe DLT was just a little bit over $1 billion in revenue before the acquisition, somewhere in there. I don't know the exact numbers, but as you can see here, though, their main focus really is enabling the channel, enabling the partners, and getting the right technology to the right customer to solve the right problem. And as you can see here, they have an enhanced focus on the public sector. So they have a really large public sector footprint. So, again, DoD, the IC community, I've already mentioned SLED before. They really have a good footprint and really good relationships within public sector, but they also can help us out in the commercial space as well with our partnership. All right, so now that you know a little bit about DLT, we want to tell you a little bit about who we are as Cornerstone Technical Solutions. So as you see here, we do focus in a lot of different areas. You know, DevOps, DevSecOps is now the new thing, right? So we can have some security conversations around that DevOps process and around your security deployment, or excuse me, your software deployments and your processes and procedures. And we love to have conversations around, you know, the edge, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud strategies, automation strategies, and we have services to kind of go around all of that. But really at our core, we are solutions-focused, veteran-owned company. We actually have a motto, or a slogan, if you will, internally called Service with Integrity. And really, that's just a reminder for us that, look, we're not here to partner with every OEM in the book. We're not here to partner with VMware just because the margins might be better, or partner with VMware because we can make more money that way, which we could potentially. But, you know, we want to provide solutions that we truly believe in and that are going to enable you to have these types of conversations, even internal to your organization, right? So, hey, what is your multi-cloud strategy? What is your hybrid cloud strategy? What is your security strategy in your software development process? Or, you know, even, you know, again, a holistic security strategy as well around all the technologies that are in your environment. So what vendors can we partner with that make the most sense? And that's really where our heart is, and that's really where our focus is. You know, we don't want to sell you something that we wouldn't use ourselves. Okay, that's really the core of it. So as far as our target customers, we want to provide cost-effective integrated solutions for mid-market customers. Now, that mainly means commercial, right? In most contexts, right? If you hear mid-market, most people think commercial, but we're not just limited to commercial. We've done, you know, 3-letter agency type, you know, automation deployments. We've done consulting for other government and state and local government and higher education customers. So, you know, when you think mid-market, that's kind of our target to help break down barriers in these markets to adopting new technology and new processes and developing modern applications. But we're not just limited to mid-market. We can work with larger agencies as well, and the partnership with DLT actually enables us to do so. So we are kind of in this interesting place where, you know, when we were creating this deck, this slide here, you know, we're kind of starting to label ourselves as an emerging technology MSP. I don't like the term MSP as much anymore, just because when most people think MSP, they automatically think, oh, you're going to manage my email or my Exchange environment or my VoIP environment or my remote desktop environment. And that's really not what we're after. We want to focus on emerging technology. We want to focus on that hybrid cloud, multi-cloud strategy, your automation strategy. What's making your organization better? How do you develop modern software? And manage some of the technologies that go along with that. So we're kind of bridging this gap between an SI and an MSP, if you will, and you'll kind of see where I'm headed with that as we move forward here in this presentation. But there's really 4 main things as to why you might want to consider an emerging tech MSP. And it's really to accelerate DevSecOps, right? So, you know, everybody's kind of headed down that DevOps path. Whether or not most organizations are doing DevOps correctly, we can help you guys figure that out as well. We can do a little bit of an analysis to see if you are doing DevOps correctly. If you are, let's have a DevSecOps conversation and start adding security into those processes. But of course, we want to help you guys accelerate your automation strategy, your platform adoption, whether that's a cloud adoption or a container platform adoption, and accelerate modern application development. How can we get agencies and companies developing software more frequently, more securely, and more efficiently? All right, and with that, I'm actually going to hand this over to Jared Patrick, and he's going to talk a little bit about the current landscape in the market today. Where are companies headed? What are people doing to innovate today? And some of the solutions to some of the problems that companies have traditionally run into in the past. Go ahead, Jared.
All right, thanks for the introduction, Gary. Quickly, just wanted to go over the current landscape, really of Kubernetes and cloud, and really just sort of the state of application development in cloud in general. So when we look at the landscape in concern or in relation to agencies and companies, things that are currently happening. We're improving software practices. So when we say improving software practices, really what we're looking at is a cultural shift in the way that we are developing software. Software, I heard a great way of someone putting it is that if you compare software to buildings, for instance, building and architecture has been a part of, our existence for a really long time. And it's a very mature, very well thought out, and approachable thing for us to do. So if you think of, building a home or building a building or any of those things, we have that really solved. Software is still a very new thing. We look at things like SQL and the introduction of databases, and a lot of the modern technologies we know, even the start of the C programming language, which is, writing on so many of our embedded systems and things we have today. I mean, we're looking at the 60s, 70s. A lot of computing and a lot of this technology was even coming about. And software is constantly evolving, and we're seeing a big shift in software now when we talk about the cloud, and those software practices are improving. In addition, now we're optimizing IT costs by using hybrid cloud technologies. We're able to sort of divert funds into very specific locations, and optimizing IT costs means perhaps spending less on capital expenditure and focusing on more operational expenses, where now we're moving things to the cloud, or we're running tools like say OpenStack or VMware or something else to virtualize our IT, where there's less physical mediums that we're focusing on. It's more cloud-based, more development-based, more iteration-based. And we're able to increase velocity and security through obviously velocity when it comes to faster development, focusing on tools like automation, automated testing, everything else, and also increasing in security because we're moving to the cloud. Security is of greater concern because systems aren't sitting on premises behind secured VPNs, firewalls, etc. And the big companies really that are out there that are getting the big wins, agencies and organizations who win, are innovating, meaning they're coming up with new ways of doing technology. They're looking at problems in different ways. They're automating. Automation is a huge part of the shift in modern software development culture, taking the emphasis off of human beings doing the work hands-on, and giving the machines those responsibilities, those tasks, those mundane, perhaps operational repetitive tasks are now being passed off to the machines, and we're letting software manage software. They're modernizing. Modernizing such a critical aspect of this entire thing, because again, modernizing is not simply tooling; it's cultural. It's the entire way that a company operates. And then there's standardizing, and by standardizing, we look at specific technologies. We'll look in a minute at this next slide, which covers Kubernetes. But traditional standardization, at least in the software practice, you had tools like Java that came along with the Java virtual machine, and that JVM made the promise that wherever the JVM ran, you could run a Java application on the JVM, and it was portable. Portability was such a big thing, and even thinking about some of the days when I was working in web development, standardization in the early days of the web was non-existent. IE did things their own way, Mozilla did things their own way, Google did things their own way. And there was no standardization across all these web browsers. But now everything is shifting towards this more consistent standardization that's making things easier for developers and easier for progress to be made, where innovation is happening. So if we look at the Kubernetes and multi-cloud landscape, this is just a super high-level overview of really what Kubernetes and also OpenShift, which obviously is enterprise Kubernetes, what it really buys us. Just for example, if you look at the both of these individual diagrams show, we have 2 hosts in each environment on different clouds. One on GCP, for example, and the other in Azure. And we've got 4 hosts, and we've got application workloads. Applications A, B, C, D are running in Google Cloud Platform. And they're running on Kubernetes, right, on machines that are managed by the Kubernetes container orchestration, or obviously OpenShift as well, which is 1-to-1. And you can see that there's portability between Google Cloud Platform and Azure, because Kubernetes, as noted below, really is the cloud runtime now. If you think about the way that Kubernetes has enabled us to view cloud. It really lets us view cloud as it is sort of the cloud operating system. And we know at the heart of it is not the operating system itself. But a beautiful thing has happened in cloud native technologies from both a development standpoint and from an infrastructure standpoint. Kubernetes and containers have really enabled developers and IT teams to be able to abstract away the infrastructure and configuration and operating system details. It doesn't matter anymore. I don't really care what operating system OpenShift is running on. I don't care about what type of environment I'm running in, whether or not it's the cloud or whether or not it's on-prem, right? Of course it matters, but I mean, as a developer, all I care about is I'm running my containers somewhere in a Kubernetes environment. And we have that portability. I didn't notate it here, but it could be Google Cloud Platform, it could be Azure, it could also be on-premise and VMware or any other type of cloud. And we get the benefit of being able to have the portability of Kubernetes anywhere. You can almost think of, obviously, Kubernetes acting very similar to the way that the JVM worked back in the days, where the JVM is present, that we can run Java applications. It's the same thing with Kubernetes. Kubernetes is present, we can run applications on Kubernetes. And I wanted to touch quickly on cloud native software as well. Cloud native is a term used to describe container-based environments at its core. Cloud native technologies are used to develop applications built with services packaged in containers, deployed as microservices, and managed on elastic infrastructure through agile DevOps processes and continuous delivery workflows. It's interesting watching software development shift the way that it has over the last, I'd say 8 years. When I really started first developing, the LAMP stack was still very popular, and I was running PHP, learning, about Laravel frameworks and all kinds of, PHP frameworks, and running on bare bones Linux machines with Apache servers. Eventually transitioned into Nginx and all of the all these modern technologies, or I would say modern technologies, but a lot of these technologies that were at the time very modern and cutting edge. And containers weren't even a thing. But then containers came along and they really changed everything. And I think fundamentally they really set the stage for what we know as cloud native now, because they started to create a abstraction that was so application specific. We always had abstraction of infrastructure, right? Abstraction of infrastructure via virtual machines, but we rarely had abstraction of individual applications. And if you look at the cloud native examples on the left, there's a couple of examples of applications that do cloud native really, really well. For instance, Argo CD. Argo CD is a tool that basically allows you to do GitOps for Kubernetes. So you take your application code, and then based on an application code, you can point Argo CD at that application, and Argo will take the infrastructure as code out of your repository, and it will deploy it, and it gives you a very nice overview. It supports rollbacks and all kinds of other things. But I think beyond what Argo does as a tool, it's the way that it's built that makes it so cloud native. Number one, is extremely lightweight. And by lightweight, you don't have to have an application that's necessarily lightweight, but Argo does not bring a operating system along with it. It's just the application. And when Docker first came out, it was one of these really cool things, because the first time I heard about Docker, right, I thought it was a way to basically run a different operating system on my operating system. I'm thinking, wait, I'm running Ubuntu and I can run RHEL in a container, or I can run RHEL in a container on Ubuntu. That's really cool. And over time, developers got to the point to where we realized running an entire operating system in your container is really not ideal. We don't really want to do that, right? Ideally, your container has a single application that's started up, that does not depend on something like systemd, and it's very lightweight. Argo also has a declarative configuration. A declarative configuration is really the big difference between declarative and imperative configurations, is that an imperative configuration means I'm getting down into all the little granular details of what I want done. And also, a lot of times you'll find that an imperative an imperative configuration is configuration over time, or is configuration stored in a database? So it's very difficult to replicate. Declarative configuration, in the case of the way that Argo runs inside of Kubernetes, means it uses a configuration that is analyzed at runtime. And based on the runtime analysis of the configuration, the application configures itself dynamically at that point in time. And a change in the configuration and a reboot of the application results in an application that's configured in a different way. The state is not stored in the database. It's all identified in a declarative manner at runtime. And obviously, Argo is containerized. A cloud-native programming language example is Golang. Golang, for one, it compiles to a standalone binary, meaning it's a dependency-less application. There's no interpreter. There's none of the dependencies at the operating system level that are needed, other than the architecture that the binary is compiled for to run on. It's got a minimal startup time. So you look at something like a Java application. Java applications historically, especially web applications, Tomcat type applications, where there's, they're loading all of the different jar files and things at runtime. A lot of times the startup times for those applications can be significant. And also there's usually startup configurations, which those startup configurations can take a long time. It's not necessarily bad to have slow startup times, but you do lose a bit of your quick failover. If the application fails and it takes 5 minutes for it to come back up, that's 5 minutes of downtime, versus an application programming language that is very quick to start. Also, an application language, it's not really mentioned here, but Golang is lightweight in its operation. Very minimal CPU overhead, very minimal RAM overhead, which in a cloud environment where we have microservices where we want to scale these services out, having minimal resource usage is a very big benefit. And GitLab has a cloud native installer. GitLab by default is not cloud native, but if you use GitLab's Helm, they take all the individual components of their traditional GitLab product and they split it up into pieces such that it deploys into Helm as individual microservices in a cloud native format. So GitLab cloud native is a really great example of a cloud native application. I also give them a ding on the traditional GitLab solution because they also make it into the non-cloud native example. And they don't tout it as a cloud native solution, so certainly not giving them too much flack. It's just that it goes to show that GitLab itself was not initially created as a cloud native tool. It is becoming cloud native in adoption. But it is by default is monolithic. It's intended to be deployed on a virtual machine instead of in containers. So that's not a good example of a cloud native application. Applications that are coupled to the operating system, right? The application needs systemd to start, or it depends on tons and tons of shell script configurations and things like that. Or if it's got tons and tons of runtime configuration that end up slowing it down and making it extremely slow to start. All those could be examples of non-cloud native examples. In addition to the application needing specific shell scripts runtime configurations, we're focusing on the idea of 12-factor applications. If configuration does not come through environment variables, but it's required by some other means, like a file that gets put in some random location on an NFS server or some other thing that just really doesn't come through the environment variable or volume mount configurations, that would also be something that would be a non-cloud cloud native example. And then a last example would be just-in-time or interpreted type languages, which if it's like a JIT compiler or if it uses an interpreter like Python even, they result in larger containers. Because they have higher containers, because they have larger container sizes, that generally comes as a side effect of having a high dependency on the operating system. That's not to say don't use Python in a cloud native environment, right? It can be done. That's not to say don't use Java in a cloud native environment. It's just those are points that you want to focus on, with the key being these application programming languages need to really reduce the container sizes, reduce the amount of dependency on the operating system, and focus on 12-factor practices, namely getting configurations to environment variables, having as much pre-configuration done as possible to have quick startup times for the applications. That really covers the cloud native. That's probably the biggest section. One thing we've talked about in the past is the difference between running vanilla Kubernetes versus running OpenShift. Obviously, ZEERO puts a strong emphasis on OpenShift as the Kubernetes distribution, simply because by default, OpenShift really covers everything. And the truth is, Kubernetes done right is hard. It is very hard. The installation can be extremely difficult depending on which tool you use. There are some tools that make it a lot easier, and there's a lot of organizations that are part of the certified Kubernetes network, and they are certified distributions, but those people already did the work to do all of the stuff that makes it really difficult. If you're trying to do it in the vanilla sense, you're just doing it on your own. You say, hey, we want Kubernetes, we don't need OpenShift, we don't need a certified distribution. It can be a world of pain. Identity and security access, app monitoring alerts, storage and persistence, egress, ingress, container images. Right? By default, Kubernetes does nothing with images. Ingress is a new thing that was brought in, but you got to do some configuration for it. Application monitoring and alerts is not inbuilt. Identity and security, there's role-based access control in Kubernetes, but it's not an identity management, LDAP, all that good stuff. All that stuff is not really baked into the platform. Hardening it, operating it, all of these things can really be difficult. And this point says that 75% of enterprise users identify complexity of the implementation and operations as a top blocker to adoption. This is a humongous point, and it's a big problem. In that many organizations fail to adopt the future because complexity is the inevitable reality of the future. And I think it speaks volumes to what is becoming expected of engineers in the future, and whether or not the level of expectation that's being placed on engineers in the future is realistic. That's a big part of what our platform attempts to answer. With OpenShift, you can deliver all your applications in a whole new way. You have your traditional applications, cloud-native applications, artificial intelligence, machine learning, functions as a service. The way that you're currently delivering your applications, it might not necessarily be what you can do with OpenShift. OpenShift starts to introduce a way of standardizing these. Because we're doing containers are now the abstraction for the application runtime. So we don't really put too much emphasis on the application runtime itself, because ideally it should be consistent between no matter what you're deploying in the application and how you're deploying it. Ultimately, the focus is moving containers through pipelines. That's going to be your testing, your security, your scanning, vulnerability scans, all the way to deployment. It's all about containers now, and OpenShift allows you to really create that amazing abstraction around your applications that gives you the ease and flexibility of deployments. And really, the big challenge that we're solving here, one of the big challenges is solving vanilla Kubernetes. Why customers choose Red Hat OpenShift? Number one, it is a trusted enterprise Kubernetes. Red Hat has a name in the industry. OpenShift has been around since Kubernetes. My goodness, was it 1.5? I think it's been around for a really long time, and obviously Red Hat had the OpenShift version of Origin way back. I remember the first version I used was 1.5, and even then, it had a ton of things in Kubernetes that. It had a ton of things in OpenShift that weren't even in Kubernetes yet. Role-based access control was already a solved problem. Routes were the precursor to ingress. One thing that Kubernetes still doesn't have is the concept of security context constraints, which go beyond role-based access control and give you greater controls around the way that your pods actually run themselves. You get your cloud-like experience everywhere. It's sort of like the batteries included Kubernetes, and it still keeps all the same benefits of Kubernetes. It looks like Kubernetes, it feels like Kubernetes, but you get the addition of all the amazing things that Red Hat adds on top of it. And again, it empowers developers to innovate, being able to create rapidly, innovate, modernize, automate, all the amazing things that come with these modern technology stacks. And you can see, some of the open source innovations. We've got Kubernetes, Istio, Prometheus, operators, which operators are the future. They're amazing. Ceph storage, CoreOS, etcd, Cryo. All of these technologies are now integrated inside of OpenShift, and the ecosystem continues to grow. And with the acquisition of the CoreOS group, Red Hat has really expanded their portfolio. I wouldn't go so far as to say they own operators, because Red Hat is all about open source, but the idea that the container platform has now merged with this CoreOS operating system and has merged with this idea of operators. Red Hat is going full steam ahead on CoreOS and operators, and it's really exciting to watch those technologies get adopted.
All right, Jared, thank you so much. So as he was pointing out, right, Kubernetes, OpenShift, they've kind of solved a lot of that hybrid cloud, multi-cloud edge type of conversation, right? So there is a solution there. And, of course, we can help with, doing those things efficiently. But even with OpenShift, with Kubernetes, with understanding that, okay, I'm doing microservices correctly, I have everything containerized, I'm on some type of container platform, but holistically, right, there are still a few challenges. And for us, if it's, whether you're trying to modernize what you've already got, or maybe you have a new project and you want to start things off well with some kind of platform and the right tooling, when we talk to customers, a lot of the main challenge that they run into is choice. This is especially true for public sector and state local governments and SLED, and higher ed as well. Some organizations, some agencies are so far behind the curve, they're just overwhelmed with the choice that's on the market today. A lot of companies are just like, look, I just want a platform that works. I don't want to have to worry about, all the knobs and buttons, that are, configurable for me. I just want it to work according to best practices out the gate, right? And so where some people get overwhelmed is all the tools that are on the market, right? What version control system do I use? What pipeline do I use? What monitoring APM tool do I use? I'm developing in Python and Golang. What's the best type of build pipeline to get that application containerized? Does somebody have an example of it? And then after all of that's figured out, you still got to decide which platform you're going to run on. Are you going to run on a native Kubernetes environment, inside of AWS? Are you going to run GKE in Google Cloud? Are you going to go just vanilla Kubernetes and manage it yourself? Which we're going to talk about that as well. Now with VMware is trying to get into the Kubernetes game with Tanzu. Just a little side note on Tanzu, it takes about 6 other applications just to manage Tanzu. It's a whole other conversation. We will be doing a webinar on that as well. But again, where do I start, right? Hey, I'm 5-6 years behind the curve, and I want to modernize my applications. How do I do that? What tools do I need? What do I need to be thinking about? And this is really where Cornerstone comes in. So as a customer, how do we take our customers, or our potential customers, how can we take you from point A to point B? So in order to solve the question, where do I start? Which platform? Where do I deploy? What do I need to do from a process standpoint to modernize, again, not just my software, but my internal processes? How do I break down red tape? How do I truly do DevOps the right way? How do I make sure my development teams are moving in the right direction? And DLT came up with something called the Secure Software Factory. And the idea here is, from DLT's perspective, is to start bringing technologies into each of these areas, right? So I, as an organization, need to figure out, okay, what IDE do I want my developers to use? What cloud platform are we going to run on? Who's doing version control? Who's doing CI/CD tooling? Who's solving the CI/CD problem? Who's doing static code analysis these days? And DLT did a really good job of bringing each of these vendors into their respective domains. So, with functional testing, as you see here on the screen, right? There's a few companies that you can work with, or at least start researching, like Eggplant, Parasoft, Oracle, right? Issue and bug tracking, GitHub, ZenHub as a project management tool, software development and planning. So think Trello, if you will, but ZenHub and GitHub have solutions for that now. Think Azure DevOps as well. Monitoring, App Dynamics, New Relic, SysDig, right? Container monitoring, Dynatrace for AI ops. Zabbia Labs for continuous integration. All of these technologies, they've pieced it together to where, hey, here's what you kind of need in order to develop modern software, or here's some of the things you can be thinking about. and here's some vendors that you could potentially work with. And DLT brings the partner and the technology and the client together to discuss this. So this is an example of a secure software factory reference architecture. And as you can see here, there's a lot that goes into developing modern software, especially in public sector. If you're a smaller mid-market company, you may not need all of these stages in the development pipeline. But again, it's a starting point, right? There's no hard rule saying you have to do every single one of these. But in general, especially in public sector, you need an artifact repository, SCM, code analyzers. You can potentially do automated testing, release management, which container platform do I want to run on? Which container security tool is the best for me? What APM solution do I want? Application performance monitoring for those that don't know. What is a good way to set up my pipelines, right? How do I do that? And what vendors have solutions for each one of these? So as you see here, this is the same thing, but just with the vendors plugged in, right? SysDig, OpenShift, Dynatrace, Red Hat Code Ready for the IDE. Which container platform am I going to use? Again, that's OpenShift. Image registries, Quay is an option. Sonatype can be your artifact repository. And again, we plug in vendors here to solve each one of these problems. So this is really good stuff, right? This is a really good starting point of, if I'm an agency, if I'm a commercial organization, I can look at this and say, okay, this is a starting point. So as you see here, even this is a lot to digest. There's a lot here to really think about. And again, not every single technology company is even listed on this screen. There are other options. This is just an example of what the Secure Software Factory deployed could potentially look like and what vendors are involved. But we took a look at this and said, okay, this is great, especially if you're a larger organization, or a larger government agency if you're government, if you're a larger, enterprise. You can potentially be like, yep, I want this, and let's go deploy it. And you can be engaged for multiple months and spend as many millions as you want. But what we wanted to do was break this down specifically for mid-market. Mid-market, small business, again, small business is relative, right? But again, how do we break this down for mid-market customers? How do we take the best of each one of these processes and each one of these solutions and put it together specifically for mid-market to break down the barriers and help them adopt emerging technology and modern processes? So we got together with DLT, and this is where the partnership really begins to make sense. So we got together with them. They've been sharing the Secure Software Factory. They've been marketing it now for quite a while, and they've had a lot of good conversations. We've been back and forth. And internally, starting last October, we came up with a solution. So we took a snapshot of the Secure Software Factory and we created ZEERO. How do we literally get everything you need deployed in a day? And then on day one, we're teaching you how to actually consume these services. And there were a few things that we knew that we needed, as you saw in previous slides. Every customer needs somewhere to put the container platform on, right? So you need some level of cloud infrastructure. We wanted to think about container security on day one and your application security on day one. We wanted to think about APM and your logging solution. You need a container platform to develop on. You need error monitoring, and we want to teach you how to integrate our error monitoring solution into your application, so that way, even if your application has errors internally, we can at least notify you, hey, you guys might want to look at this, right? And we get notified of that. And we wanted to make sure that we're, again, taking a more proactive approach to managed services. Version control, CI/CD, automation, and IAM, we went ahead and we settled on these technologies. We believe these are some of the best in the business, and we take care of all of this configuration for you and the monitoring and maintenance of it. So all you have to focus on day one is developing code and developing your applications and getting everything moved over onto the container platform. So ZEERO is a fully managed Red Hat OpenShift platform with all of the tooling, all of the things that you would normally think about weeks, months, years down the road already included on day zero. On top of that, we provide proactive support. Security, again, we did not want security to be an afterthought, especially these days with everything online and even more things moving online now, again, with the state of the world that we're in right now. Again, security cannot be an afterthought. It's got to be thought of day one. Monitoring metrics and DevOps consulting. And we'll get into this a little bit, But it's not just support. We're not just taking care of the ops side. We want to help you out with best practices. We want to be able to help you with, hey, if for instance, if you hit us up on Slack and you say, hey, I'm thinking about, creating this new pipeline. Is this a good idea? You can call us on that, right? And kind of give us your framework of what you want to do. If that conversation turns into a service engagement where you actually want our help doing it, for you, yeah, we can do that, right? We can have some conversations about, a service engagement, maybe with a discounted rate or something like that. But again, we want to be able to be an extension of your team. So this is our version of the SSF when everything's deployed, right? We have an OpenShift container platform. SysDig is in OpenShift. We're running on Google Cloud, FedRAMP high regions only. If you're not familiar with that, it is the most secure regions essentially that you could possibly get. Azure Gov has a similar solution for FedRAMP, and so does GovCloud. Google has theirs, and these are FedRAMP high regions. So just more security controls at the data center level and on their networking infrastructure, things like that. For those that aren't familiar, we have Clubhouse. So for every ZEERO instance that we deploy, we automatically integrate you into Clubhouse. And that is an agile project management platform. So it's got the simplicity of Trello with a lot of the power of something like a Jira or something like that. We have Sentry for error monitoring, GitLab, Datadog, KeyCloak, Ansible. Again, this is what our baseline is for ZEERO. So this is what we would deploy so you can start developing your applications on day one. All right, so let's talk about some of the features and benefits of the ZEERO platform. So as we've already kind of went over, we're taking care of a lot of the day one, day two type activities that may take, maybe a week, 2 weeks, a month. Some people don't even think about some of this stuff within the first year of deploying some of these technologies. But we have a lot of these things taken care of for you right off the bat from the time that we deploy all of these technologies and we deploy the platform. Things like TLS for the consoles is all taken care of for you. GitLab and GitLabCI is containerized and it's your own instance. So you have version control and you've got runners to start using literally on day zero. They are there. And if you've ever tried to containerize GitLab, it is a bear. We've taken care of it for you though, automatically, right? IAM and multi-factor auth. Again, to get into the OpenShift consoles and GitLab as it stands today, we already have multi-factor authentication configured and kind of initialized for you. Of course, there's a little bit of setup there you have to do on your own. But again, we have the IAM piece taken care of. You're running Red Hat OpenShift on top of Google Cloud, FedRAMP regions only, so that is the most secure region you could possibly be in. Not to mention, all of the services that we built ZEERO on are FedRAMP Google services only. If we decided to use, again, GKE or something like that, it's all FedRAMP in that region. APM error handling, APM logging, monitoring. Again, your traditional logs, everything is there taken care of for you, and it's fully managed. On the right-hand side here, you see this quote-unquote one-click add-ons. And we just call it one-click add-ons because it's minimal effort on our part. But there's two main ones. OpenShift container storage is going to be our preferred method for persistent storage. If you don't want to use the Google block volume storage, if you will, as your default storage option, you can talk to us and we can get OpenShift container storage added in there for you. Of course, there is a cost that's associated with that from Red Hat. Also, over the last few weeks, I've been talking to a few customers, and we've been asked about AI and ML, and the answer is yes. We, with minimal effort on our end, we can get your OpenShift environment configured with the correct GPU. And the other reason too why we don't integrate this literally initially on that initial deployment, again, all of the technologies that you've seen so far literally get deployed within about an hour. So again, within that 24-hour window, right, we can still get everything deployed day zero. But there's a few little things we might want to talk to you about first, like what is your storage, what are your storage needs, what is your strategy there for persistent data, and what do your GPU workloads look like for AI and ML. So those are kind of larger conversations that we wouldn't just want to add into the platform right away. However, we are moving towards actually getting them completely available and adding a couple parameters there for you to configure once your initial ZEERO instance gets stood up. So again, that will eventually be completely automated, but we'd rather have a conversation with you first before we actually get that integrated. And there's some future add-ons that we're looking at. If you've ever heard of PurePort, PurePort really has a great solution around multi-cloud networking, if you will. So getting a VPC inside of AWS talking to a VPC inside of Google Cloud, right? So when we start having multi-cloud and hybrid cloud conversations, getting them all connected and looking like they're on the same network, we can have a conversation with PurePort with you, and we can help you get that actually integrated into this platform. We're looking at Perimeter 81 and OpenVPN for a VPN solution. We can go Google Cloud Native as well. They have a VPN solution built in. OpenVPN is also part of that. We can do that for you as well. It's not fully automated again on day zero, but that's something we can do with you literally the first 2 or 3 days of the initial engagement. And we'll kind of get on into what an onboarding looks like as well coming up. Some additional benefits of ZEERO. So again, you're getting all of this. It's fully managed for you. And there's a few basic functions here. You're getting dashboards, you're getting pipelines, container security, deployments, APM, all of that. Well, kind of once you're onboarded as a customer, right, you're kind of chugging along, everything's going well. Cornerstone, though, we're still out in the field, and we're still learning a lot of things. And we've already added a lot of the day 1 and day 2 things that you see here on the right. We've already added a lot of that functionality into the ZEERO product, if you will. So we've already, again, taken care of a lot of what would normally be thought about later. We've already taken care of it on day 0. But there may be a few other things. As we're out in the field and as technology changes and evolves, right, we want to make sure we stay on that bleeding edge. So there may be some new best practices that we didn't think about before that we may want to consult with you on. There may be some lessons learned from a new version of OpenShift, and we want to make sure that that lesson learned gets put back into our managed service platform. And updates, whether it's a technology update or a major security update, we want to make sure that whatever information we learn from being out in the field on our traditional services practices makes it back into the ZEERO product and the platform. Some of that will be automatic, especially if it's security related. Some of it may be like, hey, we found a new way to do pipelines, right? Or maybe we found a better pipeline template or skeleton, if you will, for developing Golang applications. Let's go ahead and update our template for you for all customers, right? So that we may have a pipeline template inside of GitLab that everybody can see, and you guys can use it or not. But again, we may take some of those best practices and lessons learned, and we're going to share as much information with our current ZEERO customers. And again, just to try to keep you guys on that bleeding edge as well, if you so desire. If not, you don't have to adopt any of it. But there will be some things that we're always feeding information back into the ZEERO product. Not to mention, if there's a new technology on the horizon, or there's a new tech like, hey, you know what? We really think our core, we really think our customer base would benefit from this new technology. We can go ahead and add it back in as a core service. It could be that it's no charge to you at all, or if you want to use it, we can, again, kind of add it in there as an add-on. It just depends on what it is, right? So something like an Argo CD, if you will, that's actually a technology that we're looking at potentially adding in as one of the core services as ZEERO, and it wouldn't really be an extra charge at all for that. All right, so cost benefits of ZEERO. Again, you're getting everything you see on the left. You've already seen this in some way, shape, or form. But you're getting IAM, container registry, security, all of these other technologies. And with ZEERO, you're also getting our expertise. You're leveraging our expertise to say, hey, what's best practice? What's on the horizon? You can call us and say, hey, hey, I'm looking at this new tech. Do you think this is good? We want to be an extension of your team. But let's look at a cost benefit here, right? What would it take to hire somebody with some Kubernetes expertise? Not to mention the SysDig expertise, the Google Cloud expertise, monitoring APM, right? This is just a Kubernetes individual. So we did a little bit of research here and said, okay, what's the cost benefit here? Just for hiring somebody that knows Kubernetes versus the ZEERO platform itself. So we took a look and we found out that on average, on the low end and the high end, you're looking at between $87,000 and upwards of $200,000 a year to employ somebody with Kubernetes expertise. Granted, yes, they might have some edge knowledge about all of the technologies that go around with that, right? So you're probably hiring like an SRE or something like that. So, to get an SRE hired, you're looking somewhere in the realm of at least $115,000 to $147,000 a year. That's about the median. That's what we found. And when we compare that with what ZEERO actually costs, and we'll kind of give you guys the breakdown of it, but what ZEERO actually costs is, as you can see, quite significantly less than any of those other options. And again, you're getting all of the benefits. You're leveraging our expertise, our field expertise, our team. Your platform's already kind of managed for you. So again, you're leveraging our expertise. You've got security. You've got all of these benefits of the ZEERO platform, and we're managing it for you for significantly less than what it would actually cost to go hire a team of Kubernetes guys or SREs, things like that. Granted, you still need your own developers, but we can also help out there as well from a consulting standpoint, at least. All right, so let's talk about a traditional service engagement, if you will, right? So, and again, we'll just use the technologies that are included, excuse me, the technologies that are included in ZEERO as an example. All right, so if I'm a customer, or if I'm an organization and I want to deploy this secure software factory, traditionally I would have to get vendor A, vendor B, vendor C on site, probably get a project manager involved to start managing these separate engagements, and then each one of these vendors would go out and deploy their respective technologies, right, and work with you in some level of a service engagement. So I mean, at the bare minimum, to get all of this deployed, you're probably looking at a bare minimum of 4 to 6 weeks of ramp up time, right? And that's not even including probably a full knowledge transfer or some training in like how to develop an OpenShift and things like that, and how to use every single one of these tools. Not to mention, after they leave, you are now responsible for maintaining all of it, right? And again, we're taking care of that for you. So in our model, right, and we think this is a better way, we want to put you at the center here, right? We want to make sure our customer is our focus, and we cornerstone on the back end, go and deploy all of this for you. Again, day zero. And we make sure that it's all there, and all you have to focus on is learning on how to consume these technologies. So instead of you, the customer, working with a vendor and having to escort people, or in this day and age right now, be on WebExes all day long trying to get everything deployed, we work with your schedule and we say, okay, let's train you on these technologies as a developer or as an engineer of how to consume them and how to look at the data correctly and all the dashboards and all the monitoring solutions and all of that. So on day one, we're teaching you how to consume. And our standard delivery, or our standard onboarding, if you will, is a 2-week engagement. It's included in the cost of ZEERO. There's no additional charge for it. So on day one, we're teaching you how to consume every one of these services and use the platform, and on how to leverage our expertise. So we teach you things like how to use Sentry, how to, some best practices that we've learned, how to containerize your application, right? We can help either containerize a new application for you, again, help out with that process, or get, your existing containerized applications into OpenShift. Again, so we can teach you lessons learned, all of that. We teach you about pipeline security. We get your pipelines integrated with SysDig on day one. That's one of the very first things that we will do. And again, we just kind of help you get comfortable with consuming these technologies and developing on these platforms. And what you get in return is you get to deploy your software more frequently. You're going to have secure software. You're going to be able to meet business demand a lot easier. You're going to be a little bit more agile. You're going to be able to optimize your IT infrastructure and your processes and all of that right out of the gate. We want the service delivery model to be more about you and what you're getting out of these tools. So some different use cases. There's quite a few. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide right now, but there are quite a few use cases that we have identified in talking with potential customers. And one of the main ones is really proof of concept type environments. If you need to spin something up for 30 days, or you want to try OpenShift, or even if you just want to try this platform, we could do a proof of concept level of environment for you. If you're a systems integrator and you want to do a POC for a potential government contract, we can spin this up for you for 60, 90 days, 120 days, whatever the case may be, and you can, again, use it to develop your application and, again, provide an example of what this may look like. We can be that platform layer, if you will, and we can manage it for you. So, all you have to focus on is your application and your code. Digital transformation efforts, IT modernization efforts. If you're looking to get off of your old legacy on-prem stuff and just go up into the cloud with everything already included, batteries included, we can help out with that effort as well. Again, we're not going to completely migrate your application for you, but we can at least show you how to do that, teach you to fish. If you want us to help migrate your application up onto ZEERO, we can also help with that as well. And we can have a more traditional service engagement to help with that process. Dev test environments. If you just want to do dev test up in the cloud on a small OpenShift platform, we can do that. We can just do it just for dev and test, and maybe you still run production on site. That's perfectly fine. Or we can run your full production. Temporary workloads, that kind of falls into that POC environment a little bit. Again, if it's just something I need to spin up for a month or 2 months, maybe I have workloads that spike during the summer or around Christmas time. If you're retail, we can spin these up temporarily for a few months and spin them back down. And that's because of our monthly billing and our managed service, if you will. and also the ability to provide these Red Hat subscriptions on a monthly basis. That really helps out with, through the CCSP program. Feasibility studies. Again, if you have an application that you think may or may not work for your organization, or you're trying to develop some application for your organization, you just want to prove it out, you can do that. AI and machine learning workloads. Again, we can enable that GPU under the OpenShift nodes for you and make that available to you. And then we can really start talking about big data, and we can introduce you to a partner of ours called Cloudera. They are the data company, and they can really walk you through that data journey under a single pane of glass, and that we're going to have a couple webinars coming up with them as well. All right, and let's talk about everyone's favorite subject. How much is it? What does this thing cost? So the ZEERO platform with error monitoring, version control, pipelines, IAM, again, we're taking a lot of that day one, day two operations, throwing it all into day 0 so you can develop on day 1. Here's your pricing scenario. So we have 4 main products. There's ZEERO 3, ZEERO 6, and ZEERO 9. And what the 3, 6, and 9, and 12 stand for are the number of OpenShift worker nodes. Now, the way that we actually deployed this is very interesting, because you see down here at the right here in the middle, you see workers, CPU, and RAM. All of the tooling that we've deployed, so GitLab, your runners, your KeyCloak things, right? All of that actually exists on a GKE instance in your environment. You never really see that. A lot of these tools that you're consuming are over in GKE, because we wanted to make sure that if we sell you a 6-node cluster and we're telling you have 90 gigs of RAM available, we want to make sure that we give you as much of that 90 gigs as possible without bogging it down with a bunch of tools. We really wanted to make that decision. Yeah, we could have saved cost on our end, but we wanted to make sure that we gave you the best bang for your buck, honestly. We wanted to make sure that you had the best case scenario when you start up OpenShift, that there's minimal overhead. Now, there will be a few things deployed in there, like Datadog and SysDig will be over there, because we'll need all of those logs and monitoring and things like that, and APM. But again, your GitLab, your runners, all of that is all sitting in GKE within your project inside of Google. But again, you will never see that. You'll just be consuming those tools. So ZEERO 3, $3,500 a month. You're getting, with all of these, we've standardized on a terabyte of persistent storage. So our standard storage class right now is using Google Block devices. I forget the exact name at the moment. Pardon, beg your pardon. But and again, we're giving a terabyte of persistent storage. GCP container registry or GitLab container registry. You can use either or. We can discuss that when we come on site to actually do a service engagement, or I'm sorry, the onboarding, right? We'll have that conversation with you. Which one do you prefer, right? We could really care less either way. That's just a personal preference type of conversation. But really, you're getting, for $3,500 a month, you're getting a lot of technology, and it's all being managed for you. There's also, in addition to this, you see that ZEERO 12 is custom there. We actually do have pricing for that. It's up on our website at ZEERO.io. And the ZEERO 12, we now say ZEERO 15 is custom. And the main reason for that is because we want to have a conversation with you. Because if you're hitting 15 OpenShift nodes, 15 OpenShift workers, generally we just want to better understand your application so we know what to expect, just from a sizing perspective and all of that. The pricing should pretty much scale identical. Actually, the more nodes you get, the cheaper it gets after 12. But again, we would rather know a little bit more about your workload, and maybe you could get away with a 0.9 or a 0.12, and we just change the instance type inside of your deployment on the OpenShift side. So again, there's a few factors that go into that. We just want to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck and you're not overpaying for something that you may not even use, right? So again, this is what we can deploy, and there's a 2-week onboarding engagement automatically included. Again, we can schedule that with you and your team, and that's just to get you familiar with the tools and the system and how to connect with us. And again, we're going to be working with you on how to get your applications moved over onto OpenShift, literally day one. All right, so let's talk a little about the product roadmap. You're getting a lot out the door on day 0. We've done a lot of development since October of last year to provide the best solutions for our customers, but there's still a long road ahead of us of where we would really love to be. But again, we can deploy this today. You guys can consume it today, and it's all in a single bill for you. So one of the main things that we wanted to make sure that we get added in literally within the first 24 hours of us deploying this for you is the SysDig piece. So SysDig today, on our first day of arriving on site or arriving virtually, we would work with you to get SysDig deployed into OpenShift. Pretty simple process for us, but we would also want to also understand your security practices and things like that. So we kind of want to have a conversation with you anyway as we're deploying it, just because we want to make sure that whatever dashboards or information you guys want from a security standpoint, that you get it. Eventually, all of that will be automated and put into our deployment application, if you will, and it'll automatically be there day 0, and eventually you'll be able to actually configure some settings in there as well. So we'll kind of get into that here in a second. So we're hoping between now and August 2020, we want SysDig automatically deployed within that first 35 minutes or 40 minutes, whatever it is. And then we want to see if we can get some pipeline templates pushed into GitLab for you. So remember that slide that I showed, whatever lessons learned that we learn out in the field, or new best practices or new ways of doing things, we want to make sure that we're always updating our current customer environments. So we want to make sure that we get some CI/CD, skeleton pipelines, if you will. Maybe a Java pipeline or a Golang pipeline or a Python pipeline. Just some skeleton things with some best practices built in, and you can kind of pick and choose what pieces of that you may or may not want to use. But again, we want to make sure we're providing value wherever we can. So we want to be able to automatically deploy new examples of pipelines straight into your GitLab instance. So again, that's one of the things that we're working on. Probably by the end of September, we're working on getting some government requirements in there. So as it stands today, again, we can go into a more technical discussion if you would like, but there are some additional things that we would want automatically done on the government side. As it stands today, everyone is, we're a managed service provider, so everything's in our managed service account, in our billing account, which is the way most customers work with managed service providers anyway. If for whatever reason you must deploy inside of your environment, we want to be able to make sure that there's a more automated way for us to do that. And there's some things internally that we want done there. So we're going to make sure that we can just have you guys go up to a sign-up page and put in your cloud information, give us a service account, and boom, it goes and deploys. And that's mainly just for public sector. That really doesn't apply to our commercial customers at all. October 2020, we want to be able to expose the user side of our interface. So we do have a ZEERO application that currently goes out and deploys all of this, gives us a lot of information and insight as to what customers are sitting where. Again, we want to be able to put the customer-facing version of that out to you, and in that customer-facing version will be things like Slack integration, where you can literally chat with us right there from the console, and you can directly ask us a question at any time, right? So it'll be live chat. No opening up a ticket, waiting 4 hours for a response, none of that. Hit us up in Slack. Let's actually start talking about some things and hopefully we can solve your problem right there without ever officially having to open anything. And then our biggest achievement, or our biggest goal right now is January 2021. We want ZEERO to be available on Azure Gov. And this is more than just managed OpenShift by Azure and Red Hat, right? I'm sure you guys have seen that. Of course, as you can see, we're providing a lot more than just a managed OpenShift environment. We are helping you and your team accelerate modern software development, adopting emerging technology, and we're just trying to make sure that you're developing securely and efficiently. And we want you to leverage our expertise to do that. And again, this is ZEERO. The proactive support, the security, the monitoring and metrics. We want to make sure that adopting these technologies and those barriers to doing so are taken down. Right? We want to make this adoption easy for you, whether it's cost related, whether it's a skill set issue. Right? We want to make sure that you're able to do what you need to do efficiently and securely and accelerate your business. And thank you guys again so much for your time. Here's our contact information. Again, you can reach me at gary.schaefer@cornerstonets.net. There's a link to my LinkedIn profile. Our website is cornerstonets.io. If you need a capability statement, it will be attached to the website once this goes online. And again, thank you guys so much for attending today. Really appreciate it. Bye-bye.